Alright, take a breath. Let's step into something deeper. Because what I'm about to speak might just shatter the illusion you've clung to like it was a lifeline. The one you kept polishing, defending, and praying over, hoping it would one day become love. Now listen. If we could walk through the shadowed corridors of a narcissist's mind in the silence after the damage, when the room is still ringing with your pain, you wouldn't find remorse waiting there to greet you. Not sorrow. Not even the slightest tremble of guilt. You'd find something chilling in its quiet emptiness. Not a poetic kind. Not the stillness of someone searching their soul. No. This is a vacancy where empathy should have been planted. A hollow echo where there should have been a heart. And that is the deepest wound, isn't it? The one we keep prodding at, begging it to respond. We think, if I just explain it the right way, cry a little louder, show the bruises a bit clearer, surely they'll understand. Surely they'll care. But they don't. And more than that, they can't. See, you and I, we were taught that love carries weight, that when we hurt someone, it means something, that the H in their chest should become an H in ours. That's what compassion is. That's what it means to be human. But the narcissist, they're playing a whole different game. A soul with no keys to the doors of empathy, rooms missing, walls built high, that sacred H. The one that makes the rest of us fall to our knees when we know we've wounded someone we love. It never quite finished forming in them. So when you pour your pain into their hands, hoping for warmth, you're pouring it into cold stone. You're speaking in a dialect they long stopped trying to learn. Because the narcissist isn't operating from love, they're operating from defense. Everything they do, every charming smile, every dagger hidden in soft words, it's all armor, not strength. Not confidence, it's fear dressed up in grandiosity. The truth, that inflated self-image they carry like a trophy, it's not joy, it's survival, it's scaffolding around a gaping wound that hisses. You don't matter. You'll never be enough. And when you bring them your hurt, it doesn't convict them. It threatens them. It chips the illusion. And they'd rather lose you than lose the mirror. So what do? They spin, they pivot, they rewrite the story. Suddenly you're too sensitive, too needy. They become the victim, the martyr, the misunderstood saint. And it seems heartless, cold, but it's not always calculated. It's automatic. It's a survival reflex that's been rehearsed in silence for years. But here's where the road splits. Right where the path turns from painful to dangerous. Because your pain, your trembling truth, doesn't wake them up. It wakes up their defenses. They don't hear your cry and lean in. They feel attacked. Cornered. And in the narcissist's world, to be exposed is to be annihilated. That's why the apology never comes. That's why your tears vanish into silence. Now, hear this like it's a lifeline. Understanding is not the same as excusing. We're not here to let them off the hook, but we are here to stop throwing pearls into the mouths of wolves. To stop bleeding in front of those who sip suffering like wine. Because here's the twist that saves lives. Some narcissists, they don't break when you break. They feel power, they rise, control, relevance. Your devastation becomes their proof that they matter. It's not love, it's leverage. That's the part that chokes us, isn't it? That's the horror movie no one wants to admit they're living in. But I'm not here to wrap you in denial. I'm here to wrap you in truth, and hand you your dignity. To a narcissist, love isn't sacred. It's strategic. A battlefield where status is measured in reactions. They end when your soul spills out before them. They don't see beauty, they see victory. Because they're not standing on the ground of mutual respect. They're drowning, and to stay afloat, they'll climb on anyone's shoulders, even yours, even if it breaks your back. And yes, some even enjoy it. Not like villains in some cartoon. But because pain makes them feel real. It reminds them they can still stir the world. Still make a ripple, of still matter in a reality that often feels like a blur of emptiness. So, what do? We don't cry harder, we don't plead louder, we don't ache better. We rise. We stop waiting for a conscience that was never carved. We reclaim the pieces of ourselves we gave away like confetti. You don't need their permission to move on. You don't need their empathy to prove your pain was real. You don't need to keep shattering, just to make them whole. Your mission isn't to heal them, it's to free yourself. And that freedom starts now. Let's sit with this for a moment, friend. Because what I'm about to share may peel back the curtain on something you were never meant to carry. You ever wonder why? After the narcissist rips your soul wide open, after they storm through the sanctuary of your heart, breaking things they never built, there's no apology. And if there is something said, It's not an offering of peace, it's not balm for your wounds. No. It's a performance. Words spoken not from the heart, but from the script. Lines practiced not to heal but to win. To twist the narrative, to make you question your own pain while they polish their image for the audience. And if you forgive too quickly, without seeing the trap, it's not mercy you're offering. It's a throne. It's saying, Wes, you still get to define me. It's crowning them with your own self-worth. Now lean in. This is holy ground. There's an emotional economy in this life, an exchange sacred and raw, meant to be handled with reverence. Vulnerability, in its purest form, is not weakness. It's a gift, a torch passed from one soul to another that says, this is me. This is real. Will you hold it gently? In a healthy bond, that kind of truth becomes a bridge. It roots trust, it deepens love, it speaks, I see you, and I stay. But with the narcissist, your vulnerability isn't sacred. It's strategy, it's currency, it's ammunition. Your tears don't soften them, they empower them. It doesn't open the door to connection, it reinforces their grip. Because the more you the more they feel in control. This is why you must protect your heart with discernment, not detachment, not with coldness but with clarity. Be warm, yes. Be kind, always. But be sharp. Not everyone is meant to witness your becoming. Not everyone deserves front row seats to your unraveling. And if you keep handing your heart to the same cold hands, don't be surprised when it comes back bruised. Not because you're too soft. Not because you're too much. But because in the narcissist's world, pain isn't an alarm bell, it's a mirror, it reflects their ability to bend you. And that, to them, feels like power. But hear this now. The tears that stream down your cheeks, the that wraps around your ribcage. That's not weakness. That's your soul refusing to go numb. That's the sacred evidence that your heart still feels, still loves, still believes in truth. That's your crown. But it must be placed on a head that honors it. If they sip your sorrow like wine, then your healing must become water drawn in silence. Let it nourish you. Let it grow you. But don't let them taste it. And here's where it twists, painfully. While you're standing in the ashes, searching for reason, atching for closure, they're already rewriting the story. Not just for others, but for themselves. They paint over the wreckage in bright colors. They sculpt a version of events so polished, so sanitized, you barely recognize what you lived through. This isn't just manipulation, it's survival. Because to admit wrongness, to sit with guilt, to hold the mirror steady, it would shatter them, not bruise them, obliterate them. So instead they twist the tale. Suddenly, you're the unstable one. Your heart becomes an overreaction. Your truth becomes too emotional. And now the roles are flipped. You're the villain in their story, while they play the misunderstood saint, the noble victim. The tragic hero, who tried so hard. Have you ever tried defending your pain to someone who decided in advance it didn't exist? It's like screaming into the fog, only to hear your voice come back in a language that accuses you. It's disorienting. You start doubting your memories. Second-guessing your instincts. They looking in the mirror and whispering, maybe it was me. Maybe I am broken. No, dear soul, you are not broken. You are not too much. You're just tangled in a story that never had space for your truth. Because the narcissist is a master of illusion. They don't just lie to you. They lie to themselves. With conviction, with flair, with urgency. Their reality is a fortress made of glass. And even the smallest truth, it's a wrecking ball. So they stitch together fantasy with fear, plaster over cracks with charm, and cast themselves as the victim. Every single time. But here's your invitation. You don't have to audition for their approval anymore. You don't have to keep showing up, hoping they'll finally see the real you. They don't get to be the narrator of your life. Take the pen back. Write your truth, not to convince, not to wage war, but to remember who you are. Because your truth is sacred. It's fire, and no one gets to snuff it out. And let me say this gently, but firmly, sometimes, the narcissist's greatest weapon isn't anger or cruelty. It's confusion. They twist the ground beneath your feet, until you don't know which way is up. Until you're exhausted from just trying to make sense of what used to feel safe. That confusion is the spell. But clarity is what breaks it. When you finally see the game for what it is, you stop playing. You stop explaining. You start walking, not with bitterness, with peace, with light, with your whole self intact. And that, beloved, is the beginning of freedom. Let's breathe in the truth, even if it burns going down. Because this one's heavy with clarity. That haze you've been walking through. The fog that settled over your mind, the slow, corrosive doubt. That wasn't an accident. It was engineered. crafted with quiet precision by someone who knows exactly how the human spirit bends under pressure. Because here's the cruel genius of it: a confused soul is easier to shape, a questioning heart is easier to lead, and a person who's unsure of their worth, they'll chase approval like air. And approval, that's the leash, one gentle tug, and you obey. Not because you're weak, but because you're kind, because you want peace, because you believe love means trying. But this isn't just mental gymnastics. No, this cuts deeper. It doesn't just make you question your choices. It fractures your compass. It splits the sacred thread that ties what you feel to what you know and how you act. Suddenly your instincts feel like strangers, your voice, unreliable. And so you start leaning on their truth, even when every bone in your body is screaming that something is off. And I need you to hear this: that fracture, that crumbling sense of self, isn't collateral damage, it's intentional. It's the method. The narcissist doesn't keep you small by force, they keep you small by confusion, spiritual confusion, emotional dislocation, identity erosion. Because once you stop trusting your eyes, once you hand them the map to your own heart, you're not steering anymore. You're surviving. You're reacting, trying to fix what was never broken in you to begin with, and piece by piece, you vanish. But slowly, so slowly you don't even notice. You call it compromise. You call it humility. You say, maybe I'm just learning. But friend, that's not humility. That's manufactured confusion. That's captivity dressed up like growth. So what's the way out? Not ego, not venge, discernment. You don't need to raise your voice to reclaim your soul. You need to recognize it again. You need to stand in your truth, quiet, grounded, untouchable. You need to believe, deep down in your bones, that what you felt was real, that your pain was valid, that your tears didn't need a jury. Because clarity, the clarity is power. It won't always comfort you. Sometimes it feels like standing barefoot on truth's sharp edge. But it will set you free. And anyone who keeps dragging you back into confusion, anyone who makes you feel smaller, foggier, shakier, isn't walking with you. They're walking over you. That's why the ancients said, guard your mind. Not just from lies, but from those who distort the very lens through which you see yourself. Because when your reality is stolen, when your mind has been turned against itself, you're no longer living your own life. You're acting in someone else's illusion. So let me tell you plain. If every conversation leaves you more unsure, more ashamed, more tangled, you're not growing, you're under siege. And it's time to reclaim your clarity like your life depends on it. Because spiritually, emotionally, absolutely does. Now here's where it gets ice cold. If you could peer into the narcissist's heart, if you could hear the whisper beneath their charm, you'd uncover something that'll send a chill straight through your soul. They think they're the victim. Not occasionally. Not just when they're confronted. It's their identity, the misunderstood one, the persecuted one, the saint no one sees. It's not just denial, it's armor. It's religion to them. So when you say, they hurt me, you're not opening a dialogue. You're triggering a war. You become the villain, the ungrateful one, the one who never appreciated their sacrifice. They stand over the ruins they created and point to you as the arsonist. And the wildest part, they believe it. They believe it with the kind of faith people usually reserve for miracles. Because in their mind, to be wrong is to be destroyed. To fail is to cease to exist. So they twist. They scapegoat. They hand you the blame like it's your birthright. And if you're wired for empathy, if your soul is tuned to introspection and compassion, you'll take it. You'll wonder if maybe they're right. You'll walk away thinking you're the broken one. But that noble heart of yours, it's not proof of guilt. It's not a flaw. It's just being used against you. And this isn't accountability. It's self-preservation in disguise. It's a coward's version of survival. One that refuses to face the sacred H of imperfection. Because real growth, real soul work, it requires facing the shadow, naming it, owning it. But the narcissist, they don't face the shadow. They deny it exists. Let they build a universe where they are always the light. And anyone who casts a shadow is declared the enemy. But here's what they can't take from you: your voice. Your truth. Your right to stand in your own story. You don't have to wear the costume they picked out for you. You don't have to recite the lines they handed you. You don't need their permission to reclaim your power. You're allowed to say, that hurt, even if they call it betrayal. You're allowed to walk away, even if they cry victim. You're allowed to feel what you feel, even if they rewrite history with every breath. Because this, beloved, is the sacred revolution, not shouting louder, fighting ear, but seeing clearly, refusing the script, refusing to live in the fantasy they authored. Let this settle in your bones, because this might be the most important truth you'll ever reclaim. The story they spin. The one where you're the problem, where your love was never enough, where your pain was just an inconvenience. It only defines you if you let it, and the greatest act of defiance, the most sacred, powerful thing you can do, isn't to correct their version, it's to stop reading it, completely. To close that book, drop it to the floor, and walk away with your own pen in hand, because you, beloved, are the author now. Not the ghostwriter in someone else's fantasy. Not the footnote in someone else's redemption arc. You are the narrator of your own soul, and I know, right at the edge of this clarity, the temptation creeps in again. You think maybe if you just word it differently, if you could be a little more patient, a little more gentle, a little more understanding, maybe then they'll hear you. Maybe then it will change. But here's the fire, breathing truth. You can't wake someone who's married to their illusion. You can't teach integrity to a heart that runs from it. You can't force reflection on a mirror that's been painted over. And the more you try, the deeper you fall into that world where your cries for fairness get labeled as attacks, where the more love you give, the more blame you receive. So let me say it straight, you do not have to buy into someone's delusion to prove you're kind. You do not have to betray your soul just to be seen as compassionate. Yes, the narcissist is wounded. But you weren't born to bleed so they could heal. You can acknowledge their pain without sacrificing your own. You can respect their history without rewriting your truth. And the most sacred act of love in the face of manipulation is this: walk away with your dignity still wrapped around you like armor. Because truth is more valuable than comfort. And pity is not love. We've confused the two for far too long. Now come closer. There's something almost no one wants to admit, but you have to hear it: the narcissist. They're not afraid you'll walk away. They're counting on you to come back. They're betting on your hope. They're wagering everything on your empathy. They've studied your compassion like a map, because in their story love means endurance. Love means absorbing pain, resetting, forgiving, again, and again and again. And what does that say about how they see you? It says they don't see a partner, they see a part. A role. Something functional in their script, your heart. A tool, your pain. An inconvenience to be managed, your boundaries. Walls to be climbed over or painted like doorways. This is not partnership. It's not love. It's a stage. And you've been cast in a role that empties you out a little more every act. But here's the breakthrough: you can step off that stage. You can look around and realize that every time you accepted the unacceptable, every time you labeled harm as just a rough patch, every time you convinced yourself to stay when your soul was begging you to go, you weren't living. You were surviving, you were shrinking, and that's the narcissist's greatest trick. Not the harm itself, but convincing you to stay, to justify it, to call it love. But let's call it what it really is: loss. Dressed up in hope. Wrapped in the fantasy that if you just love better, it'll all turn around. So what now? You remember that your loyalty was never wrong. Your compassion was never weakness. Your capacity to stay wasn't failure. It was misplaced strength, poured into a foundation that couldn't hold it. It's time to stop trying to fix what was never yours to fix. To stop playing a game where the rules are rigged to make you lose. Freedom begins the moment you understand that staying isn't always love. Sometimes it's self-abandonment. And leaving isn't cruelty, it's courage. Yes, it's the death of a dream, but it's also the birth of something truer: self-respect, sanity, sacred ground beneath your own feet again. The narcissist expects your return. They always have. They wrote you into the final chapter, standing there, forgiving them one more time. But you, my friend, you were never written into the background of someone else's drama. You were made for freedom, made for real love, made to walk tall in your own truth. And that door you keep staring at, that one you've circled 1,000 times, it's open. It always was. The only permission you ever needed. Yours. Take it. Take your soul back. Write a new chapter. And walk forward. Not as someone who broke your, but as someone who rose.